Everyone, welcome to Infinite Life, Infinite Wisdom. I'm your host, Susan Graw, and this is where we talk about all things afterlife. And welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So, I'm going to talk today about the soul because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about our soul source. And honestly, I believe that our souls are perfection and can never be damaged. And I think that we have learned that our souls are wounded and broken and destroyed by events that happen in our lives. And for those of you who have listened to my other podcasts, you are very aware that I've been through a lot of very traumatizing events in my journey. And I never understood the difference between my soul, my heart, my head, and my spirit, which is the breath of life. So let's talk about that today. Here we go. Let's dive deep. So for me, the soul is a beautiful mechanism for healing. And what the spirit wood taught me is that it's the divine vine to the divine. And I want you to think about that for a moment. If you take a leaf and you put it in your hand, let's call that the soul. And you can't see through it when it's in your hand and it's just a leaf. It's beautiful and green and all those things, but it's just a leaf. If you hold it up to the light, what you'll see are many, many veins. And that's the lifeblood that goes to it that makes it green and beautiful. And that's our soul. Our soul is filled with vines to the divine. And there is nothing that can break it. It is the one place you can go for safety and security, where you know that there is healing to be had. So I hear a lot about soul wounds. Does our soul feel our pain? Yes. Does our soul become wounded because of our pain? Absolutely not. I have never heard that from the spirit world, and I stand by it. Now, I want you to remember, I always honor, and I say this at every podcast I do, I honor everyone else's belief system. I do, but it's not mine. And so if you resonate with my belief system, great. So keep watching and listening because you're going to hear more about this. So when something occurs, our soul can feel the hit, because our soul is filled with awareness, number one, and it needs to be aware. It needs to be aware that something's going on inside of us. So because we're mind, body, and spirit, obviously our soul is connected to whatever occurs in our journey. But when it feels the hit, it knows it's time for spirit to step in and help us and to basically pump it up and make it strong. You know, I think of a muscle and I think of that blood pumping through that muscle when we're working out and, we're feeling pain, but the muscle itself is beginning to grow and expand and help us lift that weight. And it's a drive that the muscle has when we're using weights. There's like this drive going on and synergy that's occurring. And that's kind of our soul. So when things have happened in my life that have literally taken me to my knees, like the loss of my mother dropped me to my knees. And I didn't think that I would ever recover. And I didn't know if my soul was damaged from that. And knowing what I know about souls, you would think I was absolute, and I knew immediately, but I didn't. I actually thought, wow, I don't know if I'm going to heal this. I don't know if there's any place for me to go to feel better. I don't know if I'm going to get through this, and I don't know how I'm going to get back on my feet. And I'm sure many of you feel that way in your losses. It's this feeling of destitution. It's a feeling of complete and utter agony and pain. And it can't be reversed. Death is the one thing where no more hope exists on this planet. Of course, there is hope on the other side. But I always say when there's life, there's hope. And my mother was gone. And I knew she was in a beautiful place. And I knew she was around me, but in the physical form, she was gone. And I wanted to hug her, and I wanted to hear her voice, and I wanted to talk to her, and I wanted to understand. And because my mother died from the attempts of suicide. And, I didn't think I'd get through it. And I kept turning to that soul source and saying, I know you can heal me. Please heal me. Please fix this. Please make this right. Please help me understand. And it took a long time, but my soul was able to help me revive myself, basically. And it brought me so much peace and love and light. So how do I know if I'm in my soul source? I think that when I'm in my thinking, everything seems distorted. I'm thinking about, oh, did she make it to the other side? Of course she did. Is there punishment? Of course there's not. And all these other thinking things that I do because of what I hear out there in the world and because my brain and thinking is distorted. Excuse me. And in my heart was broken. And I wanted desperately to mend it back together, but I didn't know how. And so I couldn't turn to my heart because I just felt so broken. And I was in so much pain. Suicide is a different kind of loss. And it's not more, it's not less, it's just different. And I really believed my mother left me because she wanted to. And I wasn't enough to keep her here. And she didn't love me enough to want to be here, which none of the above is true. She left because she couldn't deal with her pain. She didn't feel like she could handle moving forward in her pain. But what happens in suicide is that they don't get rid of the pain. They just transfer it to another person, which was me. And the other people here that miss her and love her. So unfortunately, that's what happens. But I was looking for it to my head. Help me think better about this. Help me get through this. Spirit, talk to me. Talk in my head. Let me know that you can get me through this because I really didn't think I was going to get off the floor. And as time went on, I would, talk to Spirit and I would rock myself literally back and forth. And I would say, I know you love me more than anything. I know you love me more than anything. I know that I'm going to be okay. And I kept saying these words, but inside, I didn't feel that way. Inside my gut, I felt like I'm never going to get through this. I'm never going to be okay. I'm never going to feel any different. I'm never going to be able to love again because I'm too afraid of the damage love causes me. I have two brothers that killed themselves so many years before. So to me, love was called damage. And so I got numb. I went numb. I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to experience. I didn't want my soul to heal me because I felt like if I got healed, it meant she didn't matter. And I didn't even know that. I felt like if I was capable of healing this terrible tragedy, that it meant she was insignificant. If I really loved her, how could I get better when she did that? Or when someone dies, how do you get better if you really love them? Well, our love is what gets us better. Our love is what heals us. Our soul is love, and it's self-love, and it's love for others. And that's what heals us. So I didn't know that. And even though I had said that many times, I was now experiencing it. And it felt very different to experience it than to just simply know it. So I had to start tapping into that inner well, which I call the soul, and asking for, first of all, forgiveness for myself. I blamed myself. I just knew if I had shown up at the right time, or if I had done something better, or if I had done it right, or if I had made different decisions, or if I hadn't gotten upset when she asked me to stay with her that day and said that I had to go home and feed my children, if I just stayed, maybe it would have made a difference. Maybe it would have for a day or an hour, but it wouldn't have changed what she was going to do. She already knew. And she just wanted more time with me in that moment. And I wish I would have taken the time to do that. So I carried a lot of guilt over that. Believe it or not, I had someone that said to me, I was responsible for her death. Yeah, you heard me right. I had someone say to me that I was responsible for her death and that I didn't take care of her properly. And if I had done the right things, she wouldn't have done that. And that I actually helped her die. I'm going to tell you, I have never felt hate before, but I did then. I was filled with anger and rage. And I truthfully had to work through that on top of this horrendous guilt and pain that I felt responsible. The reason it was able to trigger me was because inside I hadn't healed that part of me completely that felt the responsibility of someone else's life. It was so unfair and so cruel that I recognized that this person could no longer be in my life, that anyone who could say something so cruel was not someone I wanted in my life, regardless of what they believed was truth. It was not truth. So I had to deal with that also. And you'll find that, we're already having those thoughts. We don't need anybody adding to it. I thought all those things like, oh, I should fix this. And I should feel, different, and I should have done it different. And I had all these painful, agonizing thoughts as it was. And that just triggered my buttons so immensely. I'm not sure today if I felt hate or I was just simply appalled. I was appalled at the lack of compassion that someone could say something like that. You're going to hear things out there when you have loss, and especially when it's suicide. So I'm back to that again. And I know this topic isn't about that, but I think it's important for me to talk about this because it's part of my soul source. I felt like it damaged my soul. I was convinced that my soul was damaged from this horrific event that occurred in my field, in my life, in my heart. I loved my mother so vehemently, and I felt like maybe she didn't love me enough to stay. And I think when someone is sick and they give up, let's say that they say, I'm not going to do chemo anymore. Let's just say if it's cancer. I love you so much, but I'm not going to do it anymore. And we know they're giving up. There's a part of us that feels like they're willing to leave us. And how is that possible? So I think in different ways, there's these feelings going on. We also feel like on the other side, if they have the opportunity to come back, why didn't they? If they loved us, why didn't they? None of that has to do with us. None of it. They do love us. This is about them and their soul and their decisions and their connection with their higher selves. But, we're people who personalize everything. It's kind of the hardest part about being here, isn't it? Someone says something and it makes it true because they think it makes it true. So therefore it becomes our truth. But with my mom, I felt like I should have done something different. And I think I felt that way with my brothers too, and my friend and another family member who died very tragically and allowed his death to occur. So, I really believe that we have to learn how to tap into the understanding that our soul is there to help us heal, not harm us. Once I recognized that the spirit world was available to me in my sorrow, which I want you to understand, I'm a medium and I work with people all the time in sorrow and deep, deep grief. But when it happened to me again, I questioned if they were there for me. I'm just like everyone else. I'm having a human experience. And I didn't speak to my mom for a very long time, not because I didn't want to, but I couldn't get the signs because I was in too much trauma and my grief had dropped me to such a low vibration that I wasn't able to connect with her. So that topped it off for me. I'm just like everyone else. And so I believe that our souls, and I was taught that our souls are there to not only explore and expand, but to help us. So our heart has like 3 feet around us, and it's like an energy field. So when you're in pain, people feel that energy. And I had some people that wanted to avoid me. I mean, really, if you think about it, 3 suicides in my immediate family. Let's just think about that for a minute. I was thinking, they were thinking, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with her family? She must have been raised really crazy. There must have been just horrific things that happened in her household. And yes, bad things did happen, just like everyone's household. Some worse than others. But I recognized as my soul was trying to heal me, it wasn't necessarily about what other people thought. It was what I was thinking. And that's what I needed to heal. How could it happen that 3 people in my family that I loved so much left in that way? And what was wrong with the spirit world that they didn't stop this horrific event from happening over and over and over? Just like many of you probably feel when you have a loss, like, why didn't they save them? Free will is so much a part of us leaving when we make decisions in, maybe I'm sick and I don't go to the doctor, and I know I'm sick, but I'm not going to the doctor and everyone's telling me to, and I'm not, and I drop from a heart attack, right? So we have free will to do things differently. And we don't understand necessarily in our heads that we're going to pass if we don't take action. Nonetheless, we do. We do pass if we don't take action, right? So I really believe that that is the soul talking to us saying, go to the doctor or get well or go talk to a family member if you feel suicidal. Do something. That's our soul trying to guide us. But our free will says, no, I'm not talking about it. I'm embarrassed. I'm uncomfortable. Or I'm strong. I'm a survivor. There's nothing really wrong with me. Or I don't want to know. There's people that tell me from the spirit world, I didn't want to know that something was wrong with me. I didn't want to have to deal with it. And then I died and wished I would have done it differently. But I didn't. And now I'm happy and I'm at peace. So our souls are very powerful. It's like an inner well we can tap into at any given moment to help us get to the other side of what it is we're experiencing. Well, how do we find that? We have to go inward, not into our thinking. Stay out of your head. Your head is not going to give you the answers you seek. Your soul is. So it's tapping into that pain. It's being willing to enter into the pain and the experience in totality, moving into it, moving through and into it. And when we do that, something changes in us and we're able to feel and experience it on a different level than our thinking, because our thinking gets in our way. So it's that sense of oneness, a sense of oneness and a desire for a better outcome, a better life, a better experience, a better healing. We start to step into that, but don't expect that immediately. It's not going to happen. So when we first have loss, the first thing we go to is, I give up. I can't do this. I can't feel this. I can't survive this. I can't experience this. We're not looking for our soul source to heal. We're looking to experience the energies of truth. And at that moment, our truth is, I'm out of here. I can't do this. This is too much for me. I can't handle this energy and this pain. That's what that's where we're at. That's the state of mind we're in. And in that state of mind, we're not looking for our souls at that point. We're looking to get the hell out of Dodge. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to be in this agony. And I really believe that truly believe there will never be any way to move forward because it's too painful. But I'm here to tell you that the soul has the way. So as we're going through this lower energetic, necessary grief and pain, we're beginning to tap into the soul, and the soul is feeling our pain and it knows what to do, believe it or not. And when we've gotten to the place where we no longer can feel what we're feeling without a change, I have to do something, basically, is what happens to us. I have to do something. I can't stand this anymore. I have to get out of this pain. Our soul goes, okay, they're ready to open that well of knowledge. And it automatically steps in and starts to help us heal. Now, it's holding the space for you the whole time. Even when you're in your darkest, darkest moment, it's holding the space for you. But part of being a human is going through these experiences. We can't go around it. We can't go over it. We have to go through it. We can't go under it either, guys, because I tried that. I dropped to my knees to go under the pain and make it not be. But I went numb. I was so numb that there was no feeling. I felt nothing. I couldn't love. I couldn't hate. I couldn't feel. And that scared me more than the deep pain that I was in. It terrorized me to feel this darkness, this lack of anything. It was just dark. And yet that's where I was. So I didn't know my soul was available to me at that point, because that's where I was. I was in darkness. I was in pain. I was in agony. Right after my mom made the suicide attempt and passed away, just months later, my uncle was murdered. And my uncle was a World War II vet. My Uncle Jack, I loved him so much. I wanted to marry him when I was a little girl. He was so kind and so good, and I loved him so much. And he died by someone shooting him. And I thought, he survived all of this life journey and then dies by a gun. I couldn't get my brain around that. But what I was grateful for is that that was one of my mother's closest siblings. She adored my Uncle Jack, adored him. And I was grateful that she wasn't there to witness this, because I think it would have been worse than the decision she made. Now, I know all our experiences create growth, so that's confusing to hear. But that doesn't change the fact that my mother was in depression. She was ill with Parkinson's. She was getting dementia. And I don't think she could have handled that. She would have died from a broken heart. So I was grateful she didn't have to witness that. And she was on the other side, bringing him over, crossing him over, which for her would have been her greatest gift. So I saw that in a different light at that point. Now, for those of you that are going through other kinds of pain, not just death, but other kinds of grief, losing an animal is a huge grief. One of the things I think that we make the mistake of is we measure love and we measure pain and loss and grief. There is no measurement to love. You can't measure my love, and I can't measure your love. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And someone said to me, well, I measure love by the way people treat me and what they do. Well, that's partly you could measure it with, but you never know the true depth of love of someone else, do you? And we can't measure grief. Grief is grief, and love is love, and pain is pain. And I don't have the right to measure it, much less I don't know how I would. There's no measuring stick. So losing your beloved animal may feel as painful to you and your experience as me losing my mother. And I have no right to measure that. So allow people to grieve and be in their grief just right where they are. And don't put a measuring stick to it, because you're causing harm. It doesn't cost anything to be kind. It doesn't cost anything to give love to people, especially people in pain. So please don't measure and put judgment on love and on grief. Because when you do that, you're negating someone else's pain. Who are we to do that to others? So it's important just to be there and hold space for them and say, your pain is yours, and I'm not going to measure that, and I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to let you have it, and I'm going to be right here beside you. You don't have to say anything to someone who's going through pain except for I'm here. I think when people come to my office, one of the things they tell me is my soul feels the hit. And it does. It just doesn't hold on to it and get damaged by it. My soul feels the hit when everyone disappeared on me when I was in pain and I had a loss. And I tell them they disappeared because they don't know how to handle it. It's their worst nightmare. For me to go through 3 suicides in my immediate family was someone else's nightmare. They're afraid of it. It's almost like it's going to rub off on them, which is nonsense to me, but to them, it's real. So I ask people just to hold the space, because it's not going to rub off on you. If I lose a husband, that doesn't mean you're going to lose your husband next week. But I know when my dad died from pancreatic cancer, I went to the doctor like 6 times. Every time I had an ache in my stomach, I was at the doctor going, do I have it? It's like we think it's going to rub off on us. That's not a truth. So I'm asking you to hold space for people and let them be where they need to be. And don't try to heal them. Let them do that. Don't try to heal them. Now, I've talked about grief being a monster. It is powerful. It has power. So let it be what it is and stop trying to fight it. We're so afraid of it, yet we're not getting out of it. We're all going to go through it in this journey. No one gets out of grief, whether it be the grief of a divorce, whether it be the grief of losing an animal, losing a loved one, a child, whatever that grief is. We hope that we're not going to go through that particular grief, but we're all going to go through grief. So tapping into that soul source is so immensely important on our journey. My soul is a place I can trust because I know the spirits are there helping me, and they love me, and they want me to be okay, and they want me to heal. But I tell people, if souls were broken and damaged, we'd have nowhere to go. Where would you go? You wouldn't go to me because I would have a damaged and broken soul. And you wouldn't go inside because it's damaged and broken. And let me tell you, having a broken heart is huge. People die from broken hearts. They physically die from what's dumping into their system. So the heart is extremely powerful in our grief. The soul is more powerful because it can heal you. So if you're going through grief and pain and suffering, please remember you have a soul that has the divine connection to the divine. And there's nothing more powerful than that. Give yourself grace. Give yourself time to tap into that soul source. Don't have an expectation it's going to happen tomorrow when you had a loss 3 days ago or a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. There's no time frame. There's no time frame. And I want to talk about one more thing while we're talking about suicide in this soul story I'm telling you. I've been reading a lot about how saying someone committed suicide is the improper way to say it. And that we need to say they unalived themselves, or, I don't know the other terms, but they want it to be said differently. And I have something I want to say about that. Now, you're coming from a survivor of 5 suicides. Just pause for a moment. And this may not make you happy, but please follow the lead of the person who's speaking. Do not judge how they say it. I say my family committed suicide. To commit to something is not a crime. Yes, people commit crimes, but they also commit to marriage. They commit to love. They commit to relationships. They commit to their animals. They commit to their jobs. They commit to positive things. They commit. Commit just simply means they made a decision to do something and they followed through with it. I understand the concept, but we already, us survivors of suicide, already feel uncomfortable talking about it, and we already feel judged. So if I'm talking about my mom committing suicide or my brother's committing suicide, and someone says to me, oh, no, don't say it that way. It's called unalive themselves, because that's the political way to say it. What they're telling me is the way that I feel about it, the way that I see it, and my way of saying it is wrong. And it's a judgment to me. And I want to tell you that that's not okay. That's not okay. From a suicide survivor, that's not okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is follow the lead of the person. So if they say to you, my son unalived himself, that's the verbiage you use with them. If they say my son committed suicide, that's the verbiage you use with them. Honor them, because they don't need any more correction or judgment over suicide. It's so important. Please remember that. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack for that, and that's okay. But it's so important. It's the new political thing. It's the new right way to say it. And I understand committing suicide may damage someone that wants to look at it as a crime. But that's not what we're saying. We're not saying they committed a crime. That's not what we're saying when we say our loved one committed suicide. We're saying they committed an act of suicide. That's what we're saying. And I don't know how this is getting twisted up. So for me, It's really okay with me if you say that my mom committed suicide, or my brothers committed suicide, or my best friend committed suicide when I was young, or however you want to say it. Just honoring the fact that it happened. The semantics don't matter. The love does. So follow the lead of the person you're talking to. I understand why the powers that be out there are saying we need to change that verbiage. But I'm going to say it again. My family committed acts that they believed they needed to do. They followed through with the decision. That's a commitment. That's it. They made a commitment to leave, and they committed the act of leaving. There's no crime about that. So I'm asking you to remember to follow the lead of the person and to honor how they speak of it. Because I don't need that judgment. I don't need someone telling me, oh no, Susan, you're saying this wrong. And I know they have the best of intentions. And so there's nothing to be angry about. But please remember to honor the person that's speaking about their loved ones. And committed, the word, is not a crime. That's one definition. One. And unalived could have a lot of definitions. So please remember this on your journey. And please don't give me slack for saying this, because I already have enough of that over the losses. I'd love to hear your opinion of that. Go to SpeakPipe and tell me your opinion, or type below, or, talk to me about this, how you feel about that. We need to honor the person who's speaking. It's so important. I wish you all love and peace on your journey. Please remember my book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, is out. And I talk about all of these subjects that I talk about on my podcast. It's getting great reviews. I know you'll love it. Please go out and buy it. It's so worth it. And it will help you so much on your journey of loss and love and light. So until next time, please remember they're only a heartbeat away. Love to all of you. Take care of you.